Isaac Sarason was a skilled hacker employed by British Telecom-Sprint. Isaac Sarason was a fool. When his health failed, instead of dealing with the problem, he ran. In his wake, he left bodies and ruined lives. Until finally, his problems overtook him in the form of the mysterious Firmware Project. Now, it is months later. The scions of Isaac have become a people whose numbers challenge the stars of the sky. It is into this world of the city we now turn, a world of 1,000 experiences, 1,000,000 wonders. All one needs to do is to cross the street and head down an alley, and there will be another world. Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware Keylogger, the third installment in the Firmware Pentology by Colbytrax. That's me. Hello from the 313. It has been another beautiful week in the Big D. This week saw the ending of my crash course in Cisco routing. That's right, I have been studying the mystical secrets of Cisco Interconnected Network Devices Part 1 and 2 over the last 3 weeks. Now that it's finished, I have nothing to do but my Cisco labs until I run out of time, apply for jobs, stalk listeners and fans on LinkedIn, get in at least 3 hours of treadmill time a day, write some words on the old screen, do household necessities like roast coffee and take Instagrams, and last but not least, get in some recording time. Yep, might be unemployed, but that doesn't mean I am bored or without outlet. Basically, I've been taking the movie montage approach to health. If the super spy in the overwrought Bollywood blockbuster can improve himself while in captivity, I can do no less than walk several miles a day on the old treadmill. I know. They have this new thing called an outside. And it's all high tech with moving scenery and smells and scents and the feeling of that there's a sun beating down on you. And there's mini games, like dodge the big ass pickup truck or not piss off every dog on the block as you walk by their yards. Awesome games. But if I do that, I can't use my Spritz plugin for FB Reader. Well, that's a mouthful. FB Reader is a multi-platform ebook reader for Android, Linux, Mac, Windows, BlackBerry, and a bunch of other devices. I am not even sure I know what they do. The Spritz plugin is a method of reading where I see just one word at a time flashed on the screen at whatever speed I am comfortable with. Currently, I run at about 400 words per minute on the old reading app. I can go faster, up to 600 words per minute. That's crazy hard. But this does help solve an exercise problem for me. Boredom. I find that if I watch something, a show, a movie, something that moves with things that have pictures on them and sounds, I get bored. And if I listen to a podcast or an audiobook, I get bored. But if I listen to techno, my current favorite is Deconstructed, a remix album of Disney properties with incredible beats, and I run my book on my phone at 400 words per minute, I lose track of time. Today, I finished a book I started yesterday. I haven't done that since I was like 12. It took me about 14 miles of treadmill time to finish it. But for once, I didn't want to get off the treadmill as soon as possible. For me, that is awesome. Okay. I think we need to get back to the misadventures of the scions of Isaac. Last week, we left off with a scrambled Sam Noir mixing up his perceptions of time and musing on demon summoning and fatherhood. Let's see what he's up to now in episode 65 of Firmware Keylogger. At least they gave me time to create my family, to create the children I needed to carry through my tasks. For in order to kill Henker, I had to not only kill a woman, but I had to kill 253 women and 73 men. For Henker was not a person. Henker was an organization. Why hadn't my dream of Eleanor told me that? Actually, had she ever said their name? Or had she signaled it some other way? I think it was a signal. but I could never be sure. I had to get back to the plan and the death of Henker in all its forms. I had realized early, even before the patch and the document and the dream of demons which Lucifer had seeded the world with, that I couldn't do everything necessary to destroy Henker. Oh, sure, I could make 1,000,000 Sam Noirs and throw them at the problem. The problem was that we would all be of a melancholic temperament. We would all be earth-aligned. We would all seek to avoid conflict. That would never do. Besides, I would never willingly place myself in the line of fire. Why would my clone be any different? Could one even go to war with a team which all wanted the same thing, to avoid dying? This concept was contrary to good war-fighting principles. One does not use soldiers who would seek to avoid what had to be done because it might hurt. It wasn't my fault. It was simply the result of being but a shard of Isaac, and not the whole thing. According to the theory of the Culpeper method, the 00 or Samuel personality was melancholic in nature. The 01 or Simeon shard was to be phlegmatic, aligned with water, aligned with the getting and maintaining what they received, exemplars of the bourgeoisie, if ever there was one. The 10 or Ishmael shard was supposed to be sanguine, aligned with the air, and very social. Whether this was true or not, I have never learned, as Ishmael attacked me for simply trying to be social, which doesn't seem so social to me. It was actually the opposite of social. That's what that was. So maybe the Culpeper method was flawed from the very beginning. Finally, there was 11, or Samuel, as he was called. His aspect was to be choleric, aligned with fire, and intent on ruling. If this Lucifer being was actually Samuel, and not some Simeon or Samuel acting out of role, then his actions so far lined up very well with what was expected of a 1-1. That was the problem with an army of Sam Noirs. It would be an army of followers without a leader. I think that is why we failed when we escaped BGM. We were supposed to be a team to work together toward a common goal, not splinter into factions and ignore each other. That was what I was attempting to avoid as I created my little family. I would lead them, be their final arbitrator, their father, their God, the one they turn to for direction. In turn, they would each represent one of the 5 elements. Yale would be our wood, our spring, our blustering wind which feeds the fires of Polemo. Polemo, our fire, our summer, our heat which creates our grounding element, our Kairos, our earth, our ending and beginning, our transition from life to death and back again, would forge the metal of our Limos. Limos, our harvest and our shortage, our autumn when all bills are paid and when the grain meets the scythe, and enriched our Panelis, our winter waters, cold and unforgiving, who takes the unprepared and the unlucky in even numbers, would serve to nourish our Yale, thus bringing us full circle. There would be a balance between the humors, an agreement in hell between the demons on how to behave, how to participate in the upcoming action in a manner which was beneficial to the plan. And oh, what a plan it was! The plan was weeks in the making. My team of Noirs pored over the index of the city, looking for what wasn't there. That's right, we weren't looking for what was. We were looking for what wasn't. The idea came from an explanation of camera spoofing gear the foot soldiers of the Limitiza Mafia of Little Russia used to avoid being tracked by cameras. The method revolved around a system which used particular frequencies of light to disable cameras. It was a wonderful system. Overload the sensors on the camera, wash out the images, and hide the identity of the user. The usability of this method depended on one important fiction of modern life. The fiction that various institutions didn't communicate, that there wasn't a central big brother watching over everything. To be honest, 9,999 times out of 10,000, it would be fact, not fiction. But on that one time in 10,000, or when someone like me was upset and digging for dirt, the fact became fiction, and the various entities which maintained the cameras talked to one another. It was then that the awesome spoofer proved useless. The owner of the camera blinder couldn't wear the device forever. They couldn't go everywhere with it on. They could try. But those near them on the train or bus or street would begin complaining about the painful frequencies of light. Besides, nothing attracts a cop faster than the appearance of something distracting and painful to look at. Sooner or later, they had to turn it off. When they did, they would record it on a camera. It was this need to blend into normal society that we used to break the lock Henker had on the city's metadata. Let's assume the members of Henker were invisible to city metadata 100% of the time. Now, that would mean that they had an anonymous card for the transit system, which also wouldn't show up on City Transit Authority records. Not easy, but doable. They would also have to use cash or anonymous cards when taking taxis, and also keep their fares off the dispatch systems of the cabs. This was doable, as long as they never used a cab or car service with a human driver. That could be done, but it would involve a lot of work. Where things started falling apart was when we got to the necessities of life. How would one record a permanently empty apartment, which also used electricity and water at a rate in line with the occupied apartments in the building? To keep a single agent off the grid became increasingly harder as one expanded the range of resources being mapped against users. This became even more problematic when one realized that the instrumentality was a registered investment group, or that the complex beneath BGM was owned, on paper, by a shell corporation known as Sterne Kai Data Storage. Interestingly enough, it was possible through phone records to track the members of the instrumentality and Sterne Kai Data Storage. This was something Isaac could have done at British Telecom-Sprint. All you needed was a phone number and access to the call records and the time to study each number they called. Let's say I started with Niobe Freeman, Media Relations Liaison for the instrumentality. The 4 most common numbers on her phone tree were to her husband, children, and car service. The 5th most common number was to one Sloan Leong. Sloan Leong was the VP of Venture Capital for the instrumentality. The top 2 numbers for Sloan were to family members, with the next 3 being the CEO of the instrumentality, the CEO of BTS, and the CEO of Zhonggao Yingdong Tongqin, or CYT, British Telecom-Sprint's largest competitor. We continued this game endlessly, running down lists of numbers, checking the connections, running down their connections, continuing our recursive search until all branches had been mapped. And just think, it wasn't just phone numbers we ran down. It was emails and texts and instant messages and social networks and playlists and clubs and donation lists and vending machine records and every other bit of data we could access through the massive data contained in the Uber Atlas of all data, the City Metadata Archive. We then took these relationship maps and selected an event. Let's say the event was the death of an anonymous hacker in his Washington Park apartment. We'd see what connections were active across the web of relationships which defined the all-invasive structure of the Fernay project. In all relationship webs, there were connections which were always active. Mothers called husbands from work, parents called children. Calls between defined hierarch partners formed the 3 nines of the social network. That was to say, 999 contacts out of 1,000 were within the realm of statistical normality. It was that 1 in 1,000 contact we were interested in. If we had been investigating a small-time hood like Leo or David Shakava in Little Russia, it would have taken us months to find connections. The dataset was too small. There were maybe a dozen nodes in their primary networks linked to 1,000 secondary contacts, generating 10,000 contacts a day. In a situation like that, we would have had only a sample of 10 contacts a day to try to find our hidden members. Fortunately for us, the Fernet project was huge and sprawling. There were over 10,000 primary nodes, connected to millions of secondary nodes. There were billions of connections firing off every day, giving us the ability to push the data past the 3 nines and deep into 5 nines territory. We could look at the one contact in 100,000 which did not match the normal connectivity of the network. We then mapped the connections, which were strangely active in the hours before Rama's death. The 1 in 100,000 contacts, which flared in the metadata like fireworks over a festival ground, gave us hope of finding an agent of Henker. For Rama's death, we had over 10,000 spurious connections which were not within the statistical models we had constructed for the elements of the Fernet project we had mapped. We couldn't get the filtering tighter. We had but a single event. You can't model around a single event. We needed to expand the model. We had to find more data points. We were tracking assassins. Assassins left bodies in their wake. We started cross-referencing unsolved murders with our models of the communication patterns of the Fernet project. By this point, it was well past mapping just Fernet. We were now mapping the entire city's relationship network. Our array of distributed data processing HVAC units expanded until it encompassed every air conditioner, furnace system, pump array, and elevator service controller in the boroughs. I am sure the fighting was fierce as my children seized the ever-increasing assets the Noirs demanded in their effort to map every connection of value in our search for Henker. The deaths of millions of dormant Samuels and lower-class Simeons was necessary. Their deaths were unavoidable. Besides, they were copies. They weren't unique. They didn't have a mission. They didn't have a destiny. They were nothing like myself and my babies. As my children and their army of clones seized the resources we needed, the Noirs began examining every one of the nearly 10,000 open homicide cases which languished in the police evidence lockers over the last year. We'd examine a murder, check its impact on the network of contacts we were tracking. We'd investigate the murder scene with every bit of metadata at our disposal. 3 times out of 5, we were able to rule out the case based on the model. Of those cases ruled out, we were able to uncover enough evidence to close the case 8 times in 9. In the process of hunting Henker, we were able to supply Simi and One Police Plaza with enough evidence to close over 5,000 open homicides. Well, isn't that just a feather in Sam Noir's cap, solving over 5,000 homicides? It only took a few million deaths to do it. Yeah, amazing how those numbers balance out. Okay, this is the part of the show we all love, the outro. Firmware Keylogger is the 3rd book in the firmware pentology. Firmware Hijacked, Proxy, and Keylogger are all available in ebook versions from our store at shop.colbyjack.net, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Smashwords. Just search for Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. I'm the only one. Complete audiobook versions of Firmware Hijacked, Proxy, and Keylogger are available for download through our shop as well. The audiobooks are intro and outro free versions of the stories you hear every week, assembled into audio CD-length MP3s for easy burning to old media. If you are listening in the distant future, a week or so after Colby finished watching The Flight of the Conchords for the first time, yes, then late in the year 2014, the distant future when Keylogger was put on sale. That'll explain the mass panic when the book was found missing in the dark months of 2014, when Keylogger was only available as a podcast. Imagine that, a podcast. Couldn't anything be stranger? If you don't need any stuff, but would like to support our work, drop on by Colbyjack.net and hit the pretty little donate button conveniently located somewhere on the website. I check under the mat. That is a good spot to hide a donate button. If you home roast coffee, you are a saint. If you don't, then find someone who does, because their Java will knock your socks off. If you'd like to support us indirectly, just click on any of the Amazon ads on our site and then do your normal Amazon shopping. A portion of your purchase will come to us, and only Amazon will feel the pinch. I'd like to take this time to thank archive.org for file hosting. We couldn't do it without you. Firmware Keylogger is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution share-alike 3.0 license. That is a mouthful. Do what you want with it, just don't sell it, and always tell people where it came from. If you receive this from a friend and want more information about Colbyjack.net and our split personality website, just drop on over to Colbyjack.net and select either the audio or visual side. The audio side carries our podcast, while the visual side carries our writings. Whichever side catches your fancy is fine with us. We're of two minds about the whole thing anyway. I do mostly Twitter, so if you want to do the tweets and follow me, I'm Colbytrax. If you want a never-ending stream of DIY and dog photos and images of Detroit, check out my Instagram at Colbytrax, or look me up on Facebook as Colby, first name, Trax, last name. Thank you once again, have a wonderful week, and remember to always be fabulous.